Thank you, and good evening. And thank you to Abby for inviting me here to speak at today's conference. And I've had a wonderful day. I enjoyed this morning at the art galleries, seeing amazing pieces of art. And I think I was going to show a little video of what we do and what our industry does. Although it's a little bit salesy, but perhaps I think this is really a case of and now for something completely different. Of course, you know, you have wonderful architects here. So is the sound with this too? I think the sound is gone. Here we go. Thank you. So as you can see, we obviously interior design specialist company working in hospitality, and for over 55 years, HBA has been around, from Howard Hirsch and Michael Bedner, who really sort of were the father figures of modern day interior design, specifically in hospitality. We work with many brands. We are in the business of design, and I'm president of the company, and I represent, as you can see, over 1,800 staff around the world. That little video clip there was put together by the talented people from our office here in New Delhi about 2 years ago. So having seen all this wonderful architecture and photography, and I'm showing you some very beautiful and pretty pictures there, I wanted to talk about, or I was asked to talk about, designing luxury resorts set in pristine landscapes. And I think in doing so, what you'll see is, I'm not going to talk about architecture and eco-architecture. We obviously have great relationships with architects, and we respect their approach to their projects. Anyway, we'll move on, and this is a PC. I'm so Mac-oriented. Let's see if I can get it right. What comes through in a lot of our works, and how we're often described as designers of luxury interiors. And I thought it'd be an interesting opportunity for me to sort of look and define luxury in our industry. And starting with sort of looking at the origins of luxury, which goes back to Greek and Latin times. Luxuria, extravagance, excess, and lust. And by the 13th century, the naughty French had turned it to fornication and luxury. As it moved on into the 17th century, it became displays of wealth, splendor, and opulence. And in the 20th century, in which I think I was brought up a little bit in, it was very much extravagance, English, and had become synonymous with excess. I think it's moving on a little bit now, and you know, luxury, a state of great comfort and elegance, especially when involving great expense, is perhaps how I saw it 20 years ago. But now it's very much moving into a more select approach, very much conscious living, understated interiors and sophistication. So it's a term constantly in flux, and we work in both old luxury and new luxury, and the old attributes of luxury of privilege and prestige, elitism, ostentatious, opulent and collectible interior elements in a very artisanal way are perhaps passed now to the new attributes of new luxury design, which is very much defined by select location, time, timelessness, take care of me, time for my family, sanctuaries of hotels where wellness and relaxation can be taken through the most wonderful amenities. Modern luxury is age agnostic. It's wonderful to go to these resorts with our families and as individuals of any age and enjoy them. So it's understated. Social media hideaways, people very much questing for experiences in unpublished spaces. How do we think about this as we sort of look at the attributes of both old and new luxury? We talked about extravagance and class, of the archetypal image there of the Waldorf Astoria's high tea service, the beautiful image of the luxury bed there, and the wonderful marquetry on the cabinet at the end of the bed. And this is a HBA interior of a project we did in Venice a few years ago, the Rolls Royce. Modern attributes, very much more restrained. There's our friend there, Adrian Zecker, in his wonderful Amman resort, probably the founder of this type of resort architecture. More cultured interiors, still collectible, still limited, understated, sustainable, hip and sexy. So I'd like to show you, I'll put my notes down because I'm not using them. I'd like to show you 5 projects from 5 locations of recent projects that Hirschband has been lucky enough to work on around the world. And in doing so, you'll see some wonderful architecture and some wonderful photography. And having seen Paul's work, I definitely would like to invite Paul in the future to some of our projects. Belmond Eagle Island Lodge in Botswana, I think, is a great example of modern new luxury in its design. It's over 100-year-old hunting lodge. It provides a water-based safari at the side of the river there in Botswana. And yes, it's a pristine landscape, and we as interior designers working with our architect friends would very much be interested in providing interiors that do not work with the local environment, working with the craftsmen, the tribes, and so on. So it's a wonderful resort. And just like the numerous waterways of the delta channels that weave there across the grasslands, the master planning of resort architecture there, the design scheme flows throughout the camp. As in with all resorts, we work with the architects to make sure that the villas are spaced apart in a way that provides the utmost privacy for the guests that come. I think this is a great picture of what I would look for in a modern resort. Obviously, this amazing photograph of the beasts by the side of the river. The architecture is obviously very much reflective of the environment around the camp, and it also takes its creativity from there are amazing ant hills in the land around the camp. So we're interior designers, and we sometimes have to work in a way that's very much understated. It's a safari experience, so we're trying to obviously provide interior architecture that works best for every project, every narrative. But with luxury, people do spend a lot of money to go to these places. So the furnishings are still comfortable. The materials are still, there's used a lot of waxed leather, stitched upholstery on the furnishings there, and there's a good deal of care in the selections of the furniture. And we would look to be influenced you can see in the lightings, tribal arts, and work with modern craftspeople to provide some stunning interiors. This project was designed out of London. A very talented designer, Inga Moore, and her team. And she's South African. I think she had a great feel for the space. This chalet, we often do get into styling architecture, and we often ask to do it. The exterior, obviously, it's about an 80 meter of space villa. The inside's very tented, secure. The main feature of the interiors here are obviously the bed, which faces out, looking out into the delta. The screen on the back there is made of copper and punched metal. It's decorative, and the metal was sourced from the copper mines that are found located in Botswana, not too far. At night, obviously, the mosquitoes. I think there's a few here tonight. So everything is closed down. I think this is a very nice photograph looking out, obviously, to the view when you wake in the mornings. The furnishings, again, are upholstered in a mixture of leathers, comfortable, and safari and adventurous. Safari adventures, so we obviously selecting furnishings that are appropriate. So it's interesting, to think back at that picture of the architectural villa on the outside, and yet all the modern comforts at home are provided with inside the villas to create a residential feel, walk-in wardrobes, his and her vanities. And we designed some the designers, Inga, created a special range of sanitary ware and sanitary fittings for the project. There's indoor and outdoor showers and freestanding bathtubs. I think you may ask, why such dark finishes? We would have selected the finishes. I suppose when you're out in the safari in the sun all day, it's very hot, very bright. It's nice to have the contrast and the warmth colors here contrasting to rest the eyes once you came back into the villas. The second project across, not far really, I suppose, from Botswana, Four Seasons Seychelles, was a wonderful project designed about 7 or 8 years ago with HBL out of Singapore. And it's very much stone, sand, and sea setting. The architect worked extremely hard to survey and place, I think it's something like 68 residential villas and 37 private residents which were for sale, and financed the project. I think it was about $227 million project. Took 3 years to build, and we were lucky to be appointed to design the interiors. And the Seychelles on Mahe here is very famous for these large granite boulders that fleck the landscape. And we worked with the architects to help place the villas to provide just, a most amazing modern luxurious project. I think this is a great shot, the placement of the villa in the jungle, and you can imagine what it would have taken the contractors to structurally build this building structure. Rooftops. Wherever we do resorts, it often does become about the rooftops, the forms of the roofs working within the settings, again with a sort of narrative of local architecture. HBA provides very holistic design approach. We're trying to differentiate ourselves now in our 50th years. We provide within our studios, obviously interior design. We're master planners of hotels. We're working with all these brands to create very efficient spaces. Obviously, hotels have to work in many ways. But we're also, like myself, interior designer, arts trained, so we're very interested in the arts, and it's just wonderful, again, being back in India, appreciating how important art is to your society and your buildings. I particularly like this root of a tree here, which has been formed to create this sort of, it almost looks like a jellyfish floating through the ocean. And we do lighting design, and we do graphics and signage, we do many things, but our background is in, again, interior design, interior furnishings, and they have to be comfortable and luxurious, and they have to be fine, they have to be durable. But it's a very nice collection here of, eclectic collection of art and furnishings. This is a restaurant space. Of course, resorts have to work at night, and it's, as working with lighting designers, we work very hard to provide a beautiful resort experience in the evenings, and of course that goes on into the landscapes where it could be just black and rather boring, and we work with the landscape architects to place lighting in various ways. I think with Four Seasons as a brand, they're very obviously a luxury brand and well known for what they do. For many years, they assisted in purchasing the furnishings. I think this image on the left of this chair with this amazing sort of cotton fabric furnishing is a great example of the richness this brand brings. A lot of times, projects that we work on, the money goes into the architecture, the money goes into building and structures, and sometimes there's not enough left for the furnishings. And Four Seasons would insist that the money is there. So like I said, we're planners, and we plan the interiors with the architects. The theme of this project has a sort of French colonial feel. The idea was that when the French left, there was a numerous amount of furnishings left around, and we picked those up and tried to create this sort of modern French chic resort. And I think you can get that from the interiors that you're seeing here. A beautiful view, again, out to the tropical forest of Mahe Beach, the blue ocean. And of course, the environment that we work with very much is reflected in the furnishings and the color schemes and the materials we use. And we do many, many projects. It's a large company. We probably do about 120, 140 hotels a year. And it sort of goes between hospitality and residential and backwards and forwards, and we move with different types of architectural styling, modern and classical, like the video showed. But we're always trying to bring that sense of residential luxury in. The sunken pool here with with the outdoor swimming pool perched on the side of this cliff. I think it's a great example of good planning and good positioning to let the tourists enjoy the views. Perhaps in these images, the resort starts to return to a more older sense of luxury. You do pay a lot of money, and I think that we do have a lot of guests who expect that the interiors have a richness to them. There'll be one or two projects I'll show you where it's a little bit more minimalist. But it's really fun to work in interiors. It's fun to work with architects. It's great to be doing holistic design now. And I think this is a great photograph of all you could possibly expect in a suite on the Seychelles Islands. Something completely different, Qasr Al Sarab. It's about a 2 to 3 hour journey outside of Abu Dhabi. In fact, I live in Singapore, and my neighbors, a young Singaporean family, were telling me about this wonderful resort they went to over Christmas, and it was this resort, and I was very surprised when that they would travel so far to enjoy this hotel that we worked with. I think it was North Point Architects did the architecture, and Qasr Al Sarab as a name, I believe, is a mirage, a fort of a mirage, and those sand dunes we're looking at here are about 100 meters high. And it's a fantastic resort built by the government and the tourist board of Abu Dhabi, and we're very lucky to work with it. Photography is so important for us to select the right photographers. The only, our portfolios of our projects are as good as the photography, and it's always great to work with established photographers who can bring the best out of the architecture, but also the interiors. This project was designed out of our London office and our Dubai office, and a great deal of research was done into local architecture, the mosques, and placing of furnishings, and how people lived in the architecture. And all of the furnishings that we see are new. They'll have all been custom designed. Maybe there will be some antiques that have been restored, but a very rich narrative. Very nice to see so much art in our interior. Again, I think this is a particularly nice photograph, and you can see this amazing light fixture and the way that it casts light and shade across the interiors. It focuses obviously on the furnishings. There's a tremendous sense of place. And of course, everybody likes to look out to the views. So I think it's a very successful composition. Again, an evening picture, and I think it encapsulates very romantic sort of, has a very romantic presence to it, and it's a wonderful resort. And moving on, I have one or two left to go. I'll move on quite quickly, but another just amazing project to have been involved with, the Alpina Gestad in Switzerland, and this hotel property, which opened about 5 or 6 years ago, was the first new hotel to be built in the valley in 100 years. And the developers, who I believe one was from South Africa and a local developer, worked very hard to obviously create authentic Swiss architecture, but would go to no ends. It was an incredibly expensive project, again financed by the fact that they built beautiful residential properties on the estates and got the money back through the estates. So there was no compromise in the level of interior luxury. Again, our talented designers working to create something very special. There's some beautiful art in this interior. I think this again was Inga Moore from London. Throughout the project, there are large limestone boulders that were used, and the owners went through a process of salvaging timber from Swiss chalets in the valleys, and all of the timber that's used throughout the interior is creative salvaged interior over 100 years old. The columns there on the right are clad in leather. This amazing ceiling above the public areas, the lounges there, is a 350-year-old painted ceiling that was salvaged from a church in Italy. I don't know how he got it, but I think it's just a beautiful space. You can see the large limestone fireplace there in the back. Again, the wonderful wood running throughout the interior, and it's a fabulous photograph. And this photographer does very nice detail shots for us. And yes, we don't have people in our interiors either. I wish we did, but I think this ability to focus in on detail is something that excites publishers of magazines, and everybody's tired of looking at sort of large hotel lobbies or interior architecture. When we focus down on detail like this, it brings out the creativity, and obviously that's what they want interior design magazines. I think if you'd been if you were there now, it'd be freezing, and to be able to come back into this interior by this fireplace with your glass of wine and cigar, and sit down on these luxurious sort of leather furnishings here, I'm sure you'd fall asleep within minutes. I particularly like this interior shot of the restaurant. Again, the carpets, the wall finishes, the lighting, everything is fantastic. I think these two pieces of art are very interesting. The art on the left, which is obviously off the side of the mountain, has a scale to it which is similar to what we've been seeing on the interior stones on the previous shots. And this piece of artwork here with the horns in the background, when focusing in, is made up of this collection of old antique knives. I think it's very creative, and obviously it's a very European sort of rich cutlery that's being used. It's extremely creative, and I think art is so important for what we do. These are I think this is the fifth floor suites. Again, very understated interior design. The architecture is strong, and it's all about the wood finish and the warmth that comes through. I would imagine it's incredibly comfortable and residential. There again is the leather bed heads, the artisanry in the craft in custom designing light fittings is something that's now becoming very much something that we do. We perhaps now specify less vendor products. We like to create our own interior furnishings and interior products, and it mainly comes from, we're doing so many hotels with so many operators, they're constantly saying, wow, you're using the same chair over and over again in different interiors. And it's not our interiors, it's just that as furnishings go fashionable, they see them over and over again. And again, some very nice detail shots from the shoot. And finally, a modern China resort, again in a sort of modern luxury style. Anlu Jinhei Jindao Lake, Hangzhou, is this lake about 3-hour drive outside of Shanghai, Hangzhou. And it's got amazing bamboo forests. It's amazing landscape that you can see there. It's called a lake of 1,000 islands. And there is a modern minimalist style throughout the hotel, which comes from the architecture of the residences, which are ancient. You can see it here. So again, a new luxury approach to design, China first approach to design. Very much now in China, they've sort of come up to speed with the hospitality industry, and they wish to begin to export their brands and export their style across the world. And soon you'll be seeing, I don't know, it's happening with brands like Nuo, which is part owned by Kempinski. You'll be seeing new Chinese luxury hotels in New York and Paris and Rome as the Chinese tourists come on. And it's staggering to think that only 10% of Chinese people have a passport. So Chinese tourism is coming, and Chinese hotels will come. And this is designed in our studios in Singapore by Connie Pura, and it's a new modernist Chinese approach, and it's very symmetric and clean architecture, and lacking, I suppose, in all those luxurious finishings, but it's a very Confucius society and controlled, and I think this, one of the last shots shows perhaps an interior which matches some of the great architecture I was looking at earlier on. We can be restrained as designers, interior designers. And again, in resorts, it's very much all about the view. Just one or two more shots. Just a very simple tone-on-tone interior design. And the throw pillars there, obviously, that's the only reference to sort of the color from the lake outside and the interiors. So in summary, I just wanted to say that, of course, new luxury is in demand. New luxury is very much a catalyst for experiences. I read, experiences have a greater value than things. New luxury is individual and experiential. New luxury, if you're experiencing it, will create a greater sense of happiness from the ostentatious interiors, of which we do a lot, of the past. But I think it's returning to the original sensate meaning of luxury and adding greater value. So I hope today I've been able to show you some interesting projects that you will visit, and just talk a little bit about obviously how we collaborate with architects in our business. We're very much in the design business, in the business of design. So thank you, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.